making it personal, something that matters to you, I think is the number one thing that all artists need to think about.
Painting is really all about seeing or learning to see or seeing information that maybe you want to see or whatever, but at least being able to parse the information.
And the best paintings are the ones that are the more personal, the more real paintings. Those are always the best ones. And so, when you lie, everyone knows, they can tell.
Just hit the courage button. It takes a lot of courage just to put yourself out there, just to do your art thing and let people look at it. I mean, but there is a point where you have to let go and you have to be uncontrolled sometimes.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold brush. My name is Laura Oringo-Bear, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips, specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. Today's episode is all about inspiring our listeners. We've compiled the best tips and advice from some of our most loved episodes to keep you motivated in your art journey. Whether you're working on a new piece, struggling with marketing, or just need a spark of encouragement, these insights are for you. These moments stood out for a reason. They've helped so many of our listeners, and we hope they'll do the same for you.
When I went to school, the teachers set up the models for us, and we would, Nancy Guzik and I and a different artist or friends, so we had life drawing in the morning and then oil painting in the afternoon, and then we go to the palette and chisel after school. It was just about trying to learn how to draw a nose to look like a nose, or face to get their proportions. I mean, you really weren't expressing yourself that much. We were just learning our vocabulary, what we were going to use to speak later. But there are some artists who never go beyond that. They just get caught into and it's a wonderful thing to just draw something beautifully or paint something beautifully. But if you're not getting your own models, lighting them, finding your own subjects, we get lots of people who ask us if they see some of the photographs. We on the Patreon too, we'll do photo sessions with models, and to show people how to use cameras, how to use lighting, all this sorts of stuff that you need. We didn't learn in school. I didn't even have a camera until I finished school. But those are things you have to learn. You have to get good at those aspects as well. But people will write and say, "Oh, can I buy photos from you? Because these are so beautiful." And I always feel like you're not thinking right, because you can get all kinds of great photos from the internet and stuff. And this is my viewpoint, because some people will take photos from magazines or whatever, and then they'll transform them into completely their own thing. So that's totally different. But for me personally, once I got to that level where I was starting to get my basics down, that was where I was like, I'm so excited to go out and get my own subject matters. And some of the first things that I was most excited about painting was when I would go on these volunteer trips to built a orphanage in Mexico and volunteered at a refugee camp for El Salvador and Guatemalan refugees in Texas, and then in South Dakota, living with a family on the Navajo, on the Lakota reservation, those sorts of things. And then as soon as I started to travel, it was like art was an excuse to go to these places and discover things, and then to put them into my paintings, to share them with other people, my viewpoint, but what I've learned from those people. And I feel like if it doesn't even have to be traveling far, I mean, just people that we meet around here, down the street from us, painting all these people, or in your yard, animals that you see, or your own animals, or your own family. Those, I think, are the more important subject matters to paint, not just that, oh, this is a beautiful photograph that somebody else took. That personal experience, I think, is what art is about. I think it's what writing is about. When I first started writing in school, so many, the really good writers there were writing things that were their own experiences. And I had one of my short stories published when I was taking writing classes at Columbia College in an anthology book. And because it was a personal experience of myself. And so those are what's going to be valued more than your technique or anything. You need to get your technique, just like you need to get your writing skills up to tell your story, but making it personal, something that matters to you, I think is the number one thing that all artists need to think about. And I find it sad sometimes when I'll go out with young artists and they'll be like, look at that, isn't that cool? You know, some old car, whatever it is. It might not be something interesting to me, but it is to them. And I'll say, well, you should paint that. And they're like, oh, but that's not really a subject galleries are looking for. And it's like, you can't talk yourself out of that, because if it's something you're passionate about, it will strike a chord in people. And that's something I think that is hard to teach. We tend to just on Patreon mostly we'll talk about the inspirations that we have for things, but it's hard because everybody will have their own inspiration. And technical things are easier to teach because we can all agree on, what the values are and stuff. But anyways, I'm talking too much, but that's the most important thing to me.
You made some very good points. And I think, the whole idea of, oh, but the gallery wouldn't, like that, or, oh, but collectors don't care about that. It's like, who cares? Like, you're painting for yourself, right? You're painting. I'm gonna say it, that it's a very selfish thing to paint. It's selfish in the sense of I want to put my inner world out there, right? I want to put my inner image out there. But at the same time, it's selfless because you're sharing it with everyone, right? But in its inception, the reason that you paint should be purely intrinsic motivation of, I care about this so much that I want to immortalize it on a canvas.
Well, and when you're painting one thing, it's easier to find one person that's going to react to it, and I see artists talk themselves out of painting things that they actually love. They love children. They love flowers. They love beauty of nature. And they'll say, yeah, but I won't be considered an important artist if I do this. I've got to do something with a message or this or that. So both can be true, just because, and so, but that's what's great about like what Sue and I do is when you're doing an original painting, you can find one person who's going to like it. You just need to find the right place to sell your work. So if whatever you paint, you like classic cars, you're going to send it to a different place. So, or if you like comic books, then your art will be best sold this way, or whatever, graphic novels or fantasy art. So it's best to find the thing you're passionate about, then find the outlet. But it's easier with paintings, if you're passionate about something, to find that one person. You only need to find one person who has that same reaction to something as you do. And so that's one of the reasons why I shied away from doing prints. We did some in the very beginning, years ago, like 35 years ago. I did a couple and they did well for a print company, but then they're pretty much asking you, well, you got to pick a subject that is more, widely, that you can sell thousands of, not just one. And that's when I said, okay, this isn't for me, because then it's in my head and I have to think about that. I will start to paint for that market. And so it depends on what your market is, but there's something out there for everybody. And I find that when I used to teach workshops, that was the biggest obstacle, was we still get lots of emails about that saying, yeah, those are all great, but I need to make a living at this. And I understand that. And when I was in school and just after school, I did portrait commissions. I did whatever I needed to make money. But then I also had this part where I did what I wanted to do. And the goal was eventually to make a living off of that. So there's nothing wrong with painting things or doing commissions or whatever will pay the bills. But still keep in mind those things that you are passionate about. Otherwise, you'll start to hate, you'll hate being an artist. And nobody really goes into art to make a lot of money. I mean, it's not really the best plan. So if you get stuck in that, you're going to start to resent it, and you'll start to feel like, why didn't I just become an accountant or something, something. It's really difficult because you have to just follow what you're interested in. And it is being an artist, being a writer, all those sorts of things are very much something that's not guaranteed. So if I go to work for somebody, if I go to work for DreamWorks or other places, then it's more guaranteed. And people have different personalities. There are just incredible artists that work at the studios in different places. And some of them, that's just their passion. They love being given a project and to work on it. And then they do it and it's collaborative. So you have to kind of judge your own self. I just am not that kind of person. I really do like working on weird things, half of which don't sell, but enough sell. And so you have to look at your own self. Do I have the personality for this? Are you really driven to want to do your own things, or is it better to work for a place and then just not have that? Some people, the stress of having to come up with money. I mean, especially we don't have kids. You have kids, you have all the sorts of expenses. It can be very stressful. So maybe it's not right for you to have the stress of trying to make a living. We have people who come to us and say, well, I need to make this amount of money a year. How can I do that with being a painter? And sometimes you're just like, well, you're putting yourself under so much stress, that you're not going to be able to do your own work. Maybe it's better to do something else for your money and then do this for yourself, because that can be pretty stressful. So I think my best advice is taking the pressure off yourself however you can, whether it's another job and then do this part-time. I mean, that's what I did with writing, or moving places if you can. Like we moved places to take the stress off us. I know that if I lived in a place that was very expensive and we had lots of kids and things like that, I probably would have to have done more things to just make money. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great thing, and even if I were to go work for films, like you said, I love Spirit. I love those things. I would be happy working in places like that too. So it's really hard to give specific advice. I think trying to make it so you don't have too much stress with that, put so much pressure on you, that's always going to be the death of creativity. So yeah.
Wow. Very wise words. Very true. And actually, you're not the first person to tell me that. So it has to be true to some extent then, because I also feel that same way where if I feel like I have too much pressure and I feel like there's something hanging over me, I just blank out. I can't work under that. So it is very good to be able to take that pressure off. And yeah, there's absolutely no shame in having like a day job that supplements your income. Like, yeah, eventually maybe your work takes off and you can actually just live from your work. But if the pressure is too much, it's better to just, make sure you have that income coming in, especially now in these strange economic times.
Well, and it's not like only this or that. So
Right.
just if you're not going to make a living at your painting, doesn't mean it's not worth doing that. I mean, that's how I feel about with writing or when I make a documentary. I love writing for itself because I learn, I create characters that have different viewpoints and it forces me to research them and have these discussions. And so I enjoy that so much. It's not like, okay, I've decided I'm not going to do this for a living, so therefore there's no reason to do it. And if I went and if I wasn't making enough money at painting and I went and worked full-time writing for whatever place I was writing for, I would still do art. I would feel that same freedom, that same joy in it. So I think it's difficult sometimes to separate the financial from the creative. And it's great if you can make a living at least one of the things that you are creative with, because then you're not having to, but I mean, some of the greatest writers, their stories or their paintings, some of the greatest painters even, there's things came out of jobs that they had that were just simply to make money as loggers, as this, as that, or whatever. And that ended up to be their greatest contribution to art because they had this experience. I mean, you think of Herman Melville, going to sea as a whaler, and then that became his masterpiece story, and it was just originally done simply to make money. And so sometimes, if you go to a grocery store and that becomes, you paint something or write something from that. So, you can't separate life from your art is kind of what I would say. Don't compartmentalize them.
I wanted to know, is there a specific aspect of visual language that you think is underrated or isn't mentioned enough that is actually very, very important?
Yeah, and I'm going to say line. So I'll explain it in a second, but I think we probably just need to clarify. So the basics of visual language are usually recited as line, shape, value, color, and then texture and edges. And I gave this a lot of thought a long time ago while I was sitting on a plane actually going to Disney and thinking, that's just in my mind, I like to keep things when it comes to painting as simple as possible because there's just so much information. It's like narrow it down, find the focus. But anyway, I decided that texture and edges are aspects of the first four: line, shape, value, color. Okay, they can be extremely important, but they're aspects of the other four. So if you want to break it down to the real basics, you can just keep it as simple as line, shape, value, color. It makes perfect sense. And out of those, we spend a lot of time in oil painting, especially talking about shapes and color and value. But for some reason, line seems to get overlooked or discounted as not a part of painting. We recognize it as a part of drawing, as a part of, a good example would be etching. And I think it's because of the word association. There are a lot of things that we just don't comprehend in their entirety just because the association of the word is limited in our mind. So I think because artists a lot of times associate line with a thin mark, a thin directional mark, if you will. And so don't recognize its potential for, let's say, direction in a painting, or for modifying edges, and overlook the importance of the use of line even in painting. So Sargent and Zorn, for example, you can go back and look at their paintings. You can find lots of examples of line if you accept that line is not a pencil mark, okay? It's not an outline. It doesn't have to be an outline. It can, in one of its incarnations, it can be an outline, but it doesn't have to be an outline. It can be a modifier. So I think line kind of gets left behind. We spend a lot of time on shapes and like I said, value and color, but not line. And line is our basic mark making. So if you consider that any mark that you make with a brush is dependent, of course, on the size of the brush, but unless you're doing pointillism, it's basically line. Here's the thing about that kind of painting. We recognize that painting is really all about seeing or learning to see, or seeing information that maybe you want to see or whatever, but at least being able to parse the information. So it really is a seeing process. And in our everyday lives, and for those people not involved in the arts, we don't see that information. We just don't. People don't look up at the sky and go, unless it's a sunset or something, but they don't look up at the sky and go, let me quantify the difference between that value and color shift at the horizon line versus further up. Or what are what are those clouds? That's where you get to the sky is blue and the clouds are white. No, that's a problem, because once you have that simplistic idea in your head, you just might not see the nuances that are there. But if, on the other hand, you're parsing it out as in, okay, let me grab a tube of paint and try and quantify what the heck is going on here, then and make comparisons, then you see the variety. So even though you can't start a painting with all that variety, you can start thinking about it with that variety.
I came across an article of yours that I fell in love with. I think I read it like 3 times. And it's the one where you talk about peak shift. It's do you mind explaining what that is really quick? And then we can dive into that.
Yeah, so that was a post that I wrote a few years back titled The Limits of Likeness. And I just want to clarify, I always like to give credit where credit is due. So peak shift, that term was described by the neuroscientist Ramachandran, V.S. Ramachandran, in his book, The Telltale Brain. But it was originally termed supernormal stimulus in the 1950s by a Dutch biologist. So in my mind, that's just, I don't know why I find things like that interesting. But anyway, Ramachandran described peak shift kind of the same way that Tinberger did, the Dutch biologist, but he was a biologist. He was studying herring gull chicks. Ramachandran took the term and he turned it towards art and people, if you will. And he described it as the hardwiring of the brain to focus on parts of objects that matter the most. So just to clarify there, first of all, as we just were discussing, we don't really see everything, but we see things that we notice things that catch our attention. And so we are more apt to pay attention to those parts of the seeing process, those things that are kind of stand out, if you will, that are a little different. So peak shift would go a long ways towards explaining how exaggeration and simplification works in art, any kind of art, basically, sculpture, painting, whatever it may be. And you can think of caricature as a good example. So, why do we react to, comic drawings, for example, that are just a simple, basic use of line and maybe exaggerating some of these features or whatever it may be? Why are those so powerful? They don't have a lot of information in them. It's just that the information that's included is both exaggerated and simplified. So we notice it. Like I said before, we tend to overlook a lot of stuff just because we see it all the time. So stuff that's things that are just real, if you will. It's like yawn, I see this, I see people every day, but something that's a little different can catch our attention. Now, if you don't want to go towards that caricature aspect or extreme exaggeration or whatever, you need to find something in the process. Let's talk about your peppers. So you can never recreate those peppers to be the peppers that you set out on your table or wherever you were painting them. You just can't do it. First of all, pigment is one type of color and light is another. So two different, we've got CMY and RGB, the two different processes of processing light and color and pigment and color. So you can't recreate those peppers. And besides that, the peppers have other things they bring to the table. Like, for example, it could be any association you may have with peppers, such as pot, for example. And I smell if you cut a pepper open. I mean, we can, in my mind, where I would go with it would be the color, because the color is so strong. So you can't, if you accept that you can't recreate a pepper on your canvas, okay? You can't take that three-dimensional object that has all kinds of interesting things about it and recreate that on your canvas. What can you do? So what you want to do is find that part that is to you most interesting. So Ramachandran also went on to describe it as the ancient Sanskrit word rasa, meaning capturing the very essence or the spirit of something to evoke some kind of reaction. So if you can't capture the real thing, you need to bring something else to the table. The symbol image that you create on your canvas will always be lacking, no matter how oriented you are towards every nuance of that pepper, right?
Right.
So you need to take it someplace else, if you will. It can still be realistic, but the realism needs to go somewhere in a slightly different direction. So if you throw out the idea that you cannot recreate something, I do this in my workshops where, if we have a model sitting there, I said, you cannot recreate this person on the canvas. I'm sorry. You could draw her faithfully. You could, you can work for years to recreate, good value contrast and painting, but there's always something, extra. And that sometimes separates painters out. So, it's smoke and mirrors. And if you accept the fact that that's what it is to begin with, it kind of opens another doorway for you. Hey, this isn't real anyway. If it's not real, then, by golly, I'm going to put a little bit more of me in there. So our basic visual language, if you think what a kid would come up with on a drawing, you can never get away from the impact of some of those that early learning has kind of put into our brains. So to go on and create a symbol that is it's like a historical novel or something. It's so much more than just a picture of somebody.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's where we get, it's a painting. It's not a picture of somebody, it's a painting. It becomes something else. We need to ask ourselves a lot of times when we go to paint, it's kind of like, well, what's important here? And then you have to decide, of course, what's important to you as the painter, and go from there. But yeah, it's not the detail. So an interesting note on detail on the way we see, the only reason we think we see in detail is because our eyes are constantly moving, period, end of story. Because your detail vision is in the very center of your eye. And if you held your arm out and looked at your thumbnail, the size of your thumbnail is about your detail vision.
Oh, wow.
With your arm held straight out in front of you. Yeah, that little tiny area. That's your detail vision. So anything outside of that is your peripheral vision. And so the only reason we think we see everything as detailed is because our eyes are always moving, and they don't have to move a lot, to go from one detail area to another detail area. But what we disregard is the importance of our peripheral vision, which is just very impactful. And here's a little science note, if you will, that our peripheral vision is better at assessing value shifts than our detail vision.
Wow. That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's just important to keep that in mind when you're painting. Something to do as an exercise, which is kind of fascinating, is when you're looking at something, don't deliberately focus your eyes on just one thing. Just kind of relax your eyes as much as possible while staring straight ahead, and allow yourself to take in as much of the visual field around you without just getting caught up in a detail area,
Right.
And it's just an interesting way of looking at visual information without just going in for the kill, if you will, and going in for that detail.
At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal, considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e-commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day-by-day, step-by-step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's FASO.com/podcast.
And the best paintings are the ones that are the more personal, the more real paintings. Those are always the best ones. And so, when you lie, everyone knows, they can tell, so like, I think, and I have most of my self-portraits still, but I think my self-portraits are some of my best paintings because I'm just doing them for me, so it's kind of like, there's no BS in there. I'm not trying to sell a painting or, you know, conform to somebody else's idea of what they want to see. It's just me. And so they're very direct, and so I think they're good. But yeah, and you know, they're different too. You know, so that's another thing that I think is important. Just which goes into not having a school that I belong to or anything, is, you know, like everything is open. You know, I'm open to, you know, any kind of style or whatever gets the point across. You know, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I don't like that. I mean, I like Mark Rothko. I like, you know, whoever. You know, it's like, okay, he's not a figurative painter. Okay, but what he does looks cool. You know, and like you were talking about, like a lot of times there's like big silhouettes in my paintings and things like that. It's, you know, I like Black Sabbath. You know, I like heavy guitar riffs. I like, you know, simple but powerful, you know, and that's kind of what I'm going for in almost all my paintings, you know. Different ways of framing, you know, even cinematic kind of things, you know, like good filmmakers, things like that. I've been getting into that more lately. That's what I've been kind of diving into lately, more relationship kind of based narrative painting. Before, I mean, I painted a lot of just solo people, and now I'm doing a little bit more of couples and interactions between them. So that's been different for me. So, but yeah, got off topic a little bit there, but that's what I think makes that, and that's why anyone can do great work, you know, because if it's true to them, it's going to be great, you know. And that's another thing too, you know, you don't have to, like, maybe you know this guy, but no one's gonna know who he is. But there's a guitarist called Yngwie Malmsteen, but he could play like every single classical music piece on his guitar super fast, and none of his songs are good. They're just horrible. But as a technician, he's the best. You know, he's like the best guitarist ever, right? But you don't know who he is, right? You know, we like the Beatles and things like that. Simple, you know, because simple, and it tells the story. It's not bogged down in technical, you know, prowess. It's just beautiful and simple and elegant, and it has emotion behind it. It's not just how fast you can play a complex thing, you know, or how many values you can get away with, or gradations, and, you know, things like that are just, they're meaningless. You know, they're technically meaningless unless there's something behind it, you know, something of value behind it, you know, something true. So that's kind of my painting philosophy. That's kind of how I approach painting. I try to, anyway.
Like my question now is more so towards like when you were teaching, and then, you know, maybe you became a full-time artist, right? Not that transition, right? What was that like for you? Was it like slowly it, you know, kind of worked out that way, or were you able to just like cut and just go?
Yeah, no, it was slow. It was over a few years for sure. Because I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to be a fine artist. I wanted to be a gallery artist, you know. And so I was like, what do I have to do to, you know, to do this? And I just wanted everything to culminate to where it would help facilitate that, you know. So working at Borders didn't really facilitate that, you know, too much, you know. So as soon as I could cut that out, I did. But yeah, you know, I think when you teach, like, you know, a lot of times I would get, you know, because my drawings were pretty decent drawings when I was teaching, because I would teach life drawing, and a lot of times I would get people to take my class, and they would see me, and, you know, I was like, you know, 20 something years old, and like, oh, you're just a kid, you know, like, I thought you'd be like an old man or something, and I'm like, I think, but some of the best teachers are the ones that are, you know, just kind of learning, and, you know, can do the things, but everything is kind of new and fresh to them. They're not like crusted over, and, you know, they can actually express the ideas that maybe someone will just be like, you just got to go through a million drawings to figure it out. So, you know, teaching I think almost anyone can do that, early on. I think that's a really good way to start. And, it doubles down on what you know. You're teaching somebody, what you know, and so you have to vocalize it and basically explain it to somebody who has no clue. And it's also good. I have some good teaching stories because I've taught for a long time, and I've taught some. I mean, I taught a guy. I'm positive he was in the witness relocation program. I mean, I'm positive. You know, this guy was like total Sopranos guy, and he had a pinky ring that was like as big as my thumb on his pinky, and he could just smash me in any time if you wanted to. He was humongous. But yeah, so teaching it's interesting, it's fun, but you learn more, you get better at your craft by teaching. So I think that is a great way to supplement your income. And then like the thing I want to say with social media is, it's easy to get bogged down in it and just kind of be negative towards it. But it's like a great opportunity for artists right now. I know tons of artists, and I'm sure most of the viewers do also, that just sell, directly or through their Instagram or whatever. They don't have a gallery, and it's also, I think we all have a degree of creativity, and you just have to kind of put it into the into your posts. Like a lot of people do the same things over and over, like varnishing the paintings or whatever. I mean, I do that, but but you just be creative with it. When I first got that like aha moment, when and I didn't get it, the aha moment, until after it happened. But what I did is, for that studio sale, I laid out a whole bunch of paintings on my studio floor, and I took a picture of it. And I'm like, I'm gonna have a studio sale, and all these are gonna be here, and frames and all kinds of stuff. And then people started emailing me that picture back and circling the paintings. They're like, how much is this one? How much? Like, a lot of people. And I'm like, oh wow, this is really this really works. Just kind of organic. I'm not trying to sell an individual painting. I'm just kind of showing them what I'm doing. And it worked great. Like I said, I sold almost everything before the actual opening of the studio sale, the physical opening. So I think it's just a matter of putting your creativity into the marketing side of your paintings, and it can be anything. It can be anything. There's tons of ways to do it. Stuff that's not been done yet, stuff that's been done with your own little twist on it. It could be anything, but it's when you sell your stuff yourself, you don't have to give a percentage to the gallery. It's very nice. It's very nice. And like a lot of galleries don't share information like who bought your painting. So you develop a relationship with that person, and a lot of times those relationships last years, right? They continue to purchase from you. So it's good. And I like knowing who has my paintings. I enjoy that a lot. And they send you a picture of it on their wall or whatever. It's so gratifying, so yeah, that's a really good side of kind of social media and being able to market yourself and be be a living artist. So today, paint what you love, and kind of just I think that's the key to it. I think if you go in with like a marketing strategy and things like that, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder. And if you just start small and build from that, it becomes easier. Because a lot of times you get into a trap where you may have some studio overhead cost or whatever, and you feel like, well, if I paint this, then I can, afford that. And you just get way out on an island that you don't want to be on, and painting stuff you don't want to paint. And it's difficult to enjoy painting. That's probably the most important thing, like to be successful and enjoy what you're doing, because someone asked me I think my dad. It's like, are you still enjoying it? I'm like, hell yeah, like, yeah, for sure. This is what I've been doing the whole time. And you know, I don't know if I want to say this part, but like I've done it. My parents, no help, like no money. So it's been tough. Because I didn't go to college. I went to junior college, but no like you know, um official diploma or anything like that, degree. That's another thing that's good. You don't need a degree or anything to teach, generally, unless you're doing a accredited university. And even then, you don't need it really. But I've taught at fashion schools, taught all over the place, and yeah, they just care if you're good and you can convey, the message in a pleasant way, I guess. But yeah, yeah, for sure. Paint what you love, and you'll figure out how to make a living from that. If you start small. I think that's a good final thought.
Just hit the courage button. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than it's gonna take it, you just can't control it, and you can't make it easy. And it's taken a lot. It takes a lot of courage just to put yourself out there, just to do your art thing and let people look at it. I mean, but there is a point where you have to let go, and you have to be uncontrolled sometimes. And um the word courage just comes to mind foremost. Yeah,
Yes,
just
absolutely.
do it.
Could I add
Yeah.
could I add also,
Of course.
I would say get better.
Oh, yeah,
And
work at it.
I would say that to any artist living right now, get better,
Mhm.
because there's a real trap to think if you're selling or if you're proud or anything like that, that there's some sort of a rival. But since it's this go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I don't want to arrive. I want to work at it, but I want to continue to learn and work at it. And that keeps it exciting. And if I just find a certain way to do certain things, that's going to bore me.
Mhm.
So keeping myself um, excited and intrigued by what we do is probably one of the best things.
And this is where I've learned it, just watching her when she gets bored and falling back into a little bit of a hole, like, oh, I don't want to go out there, or I don't want to, but it's because she's become bored with what she's doing. And so, or she's feels the pressure to paint for someone other than her. And that is a really key thing that we try to keep the fire stoked on around here, for sure, is to paint what you
Well,
want.
that really brings me to the place of paint what interests you, paint what you love. I really believe the viewer sees that. They know it when you're happy, or when you're intrigued by what you're doing. Um, though, be selfish a little bit. I mean, I spent my whole life trying not to be a selfish person. But when it came to the art, it was like, okay, it's time. It's time to do what I want to do and to express what I want to express, and not to worry about sales. Because if I don't worry about sales, then I believe I'm in a more genuine place.
Absolutely.
Now, my first experience in a gallery was I had taken my first works in to be framed at this frame shop gallery, and the words that came out of the gallerist's mouth were, "I'm interested in your work, this designer in our shop is very interested in what you're doing. We would like to consider carrying you, but here were the words: you must be prolific.
Ooh.
You know, oh, wow. He took something that was so exciting and then all of a sudden did put pressure on it. Or, but I heard it. And that was a huge jump in getting started professionally, is I had heard the words prolific. And I took it to heart, and I think I'm still taking it to heart. But it's a good thing. It keeps me in the paints and doing what I do love. So, I used to look at what I posted or the newsletter or an ad in a magazine and try to put, well, did that sell something? Did that move something? And it felt like it didn't at all. And I've really come to the place, I really have, that I feel like each painting has a home and it's going to find it. And that sounds a little out there, but I really have begun, and that has helped me release and let it go and just create what I'm enjoying, and knowing that every now and then I pray about it. I do. I just, and that was a biggie for me to even think it was worth the prayer. But I have really, I just try to live it out and not try to find the niche. Instead, just do it and be. And I think all of those things and the doing different things has got to help. But would you agree?
Yeah, I think the question too would be that we continue to ask. She asked me in her way, and I ask her, I say, are you being Kathie? Are you Kathie? Are you, not just be Kathie? Because if she's doing something, whether it's social media or painting a painting that's just not Kathie, again, the viewer sees it. And that about finding every painting, finding its home. I'm looking at a stack leaning against the wall over here, and that might be its home.
Yes.
They may a big old stack right there.
It may find its home in the burn pile.
That's right. But it all comes from earlier when you said that statement that that everything has brought us to this place. So that stack is still doing something within her to help her be genuine, to be Kathie. And so,
and that magazine ad cost a whole lot of money, and you really want to know, but that is getting you the public, and especially this wonderful plein air world, because it's gotten such feet under it. It's letting them know what you're up to and who you are, and that you're brave enough to put a half-page ad, in there. And it sooner or later, well, it's taken, I'd say it took about 10 years for just my name to be known a little bit. Shockingly, it was just a shock to run into somebody at a convention or an event. Are you Kathie Odom? Who knew? It's wow. Now that'll propel you to get in front of the easel more, too. But the courage to finance things, the courage to put a lot of paint on that palette instead of just little bitty bits, all of those things, I think, just tend to, you're worth it, and the painting is worth it, and it's a deal. It's a big deal, and let's buy into ourselves. And
while meanwhile, here's another quote from a favorite book of ours that says, "Don't think too highly of yourself, but with sober judgment." So we try to stay in. Isn't that great? Do not think more highly of yourself than you. Do not think more highly of yourself than you ought, but with sober judgment. And so, we need each other. We need each other to say, "Are you drunk on yourself?" Because I get drunk on myself. I just think too highly of myself. So can we have a little bit be a little bit more sober about it all? And so with a career, with people saying, "Are you Kathie Odom?" You gotta have to go, "Yeah, I'm just good old Kathie Odom." Not
that's usually how I answer.
Do you have any final pieces of advice for anyone out there who might be listening?
I don't think any different than what we've said, but if I could leave people with put yourself out there and have courage about it, that would be definitely.
I have one thing, please. And that has to do with pricing.
Oh. Here we go.
and I think it's all integrated together in what we're saying. And I like to say that when Kathie paints a painting, she's kind of doing this and then putting it onto the canvas. So she's scratching she's putting her DNA into the painting. How much is that worth? And so you don't just say, "Oh, it's this." No, it's a piece of you, even if you don't like it at the moment. It's you on the way. And so price it accordingly. And if you don't, you hurt our other artists as well, who are trying to put themselves literally out there, putting their DNA into a painting. And so the way in which you price, you ought to need to pinch yourself to price it there. If it's an easy number for you to price it at, you're too low. You need to be able to say,
courage.
There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
Even with that,
we can't afford a Kathie Odom painting because we're lifting it up, and other people have said, "I want a piece of Kathie," and that's not just a marketing. Let's push this. How high is the market ceiling? That sort of thing. It is a little bit of that, but more than anything else, it's taking yourself seriously.
Well, it took a lot of putting yourself out there in events, or you're working to a gallery or a national show, being courageous enough to enter those. And so, I mean, shockingly enough for me, are ribbons that are over here on this metal cabinet of mine. And I don't show them at all so that people that walk in my studio see that. I put them there to say to Kathie every day, "You've done something with this, and something's going on, and
value. That's called value.
You've been courageous." And so actually the market has pretty much told me where to price things because of what's happened. And so all of that comes into play. So for beginners or amateur, they call themselves, "Oh, I just do this, as a side thing." Even take when you're take that seriously, because there's a lot of us out here taking it very serious. Yeah.